about that, the bits in the Connacht game in Galway, in the Leicester game, and he felt he saw something different. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
This is like an all-time great Irish coaching performance from O'Gara. Like, we should start there as opposed to what happened Leinster, because his reputation is now secure, and the opportunities that are going to come his way over the next decade as a result of actually getting over the line in this competition, fair play to him. But in the here and now, what's your take on what O'Gara has achieved?
It's incredible, really. And with respect to Rog, I think none of us really saw this happening. I had his kids before the game giving out to me about doing the TikTok video for EPCR the morning of the match, predicting Leinster would win by 8 to 10 points. I said it with G last week as well. And that's based on the performances Leinster have put in, particularly the quarter-final, semi-final. But look, obviously knowing Rog the way I do and having played with him, no matter what the odds are against him, he'll always believe that whether he was a player or a coach, that he can win. He has that winning mentality, and it obviously translated into his players, and they believed as well. And I think probably the most impressive thing was their never say die attitude and the desire and the will to win. They kept going. At 18-10, we all thought it was gone for La Rochelle, and that Leinster would just manage the game at that point with 15-20 minutes to go and just see it out, really. That was probably the predictable result. Nobody really saw that one coming, but I did say to people, and I had this feeling during the week, that La Rochelle are a very, very resilient team. There's a hardiness and a toughness about them that, you compare them to Toulouse in the semi-final. Toulouse have so many superstars, loads of guys in the French team. La Rochelle don't. Of course, they have 3 or 4 international players who are playing regularly, but their collective drive and desire was what got them the results. If you look at the game tactically, Ger, and it was just one of those things that you talk about the masterclass of Rog, obviously to get them motivated and the emotion right, to tactically get them really organised defensively, not making a lot of mistakes. I think if La Rochelle lost the game, they certainly would have looked at their discipline, because they gave away a lot of silly penalties. And it's probably a little bit like myself when I played. You kind of have that kind of drive and emotion to really be confrontational, and that's the way they had to play. And they jumped the gun a lot of the time. They give away lots of penalties. Probably lucky they didn't have someone in the bin for those penalties. I know Laval was sin bin for the trip in Gibson-Park, but that kind of high pitch emotion that they had continued for the whole game, and they did stop Leinster. The wraparound passes, the accuracy that we usually see from Leinster when they're so dominant, they didn't have that. They tried it a few times, and just the end result was La Rochelle, somebody got their timing right and they broke it down and forced Leinster to be inaccurate. So it was a dogfight, and Leinster got dragged into a dogfight by a very resilient, powerful team who had their own opportunities. I was surprised how ambitious they were with the ball, particularly in the first half as well. They were going wide a lot, and it was a really intense game that La Rochelle just never gave up, and I think they rattled Leinster.
O'Gara was saying afterwards that he looked at the Leinster and Connacht game, and he looked at the Leinster and Leicester game, and he picked bits from those games that gave him hope and a game plan for Saturday. So what did he see, do you think, in those games that informed his approach to Saturday?
Probably the game in Galway, and I look back at the games as well, and I thought, is there any chink in the armour here? And no matter how good any team is, there's probably moments in games that you look at where the opposition had you under pressure. How did they do that? I think both of them were kind of responses to Leinster being ahead, weren't they? In the Connacht game in Galway, It ended up being very close in the end, 26-21, I think that game, first round 16 game was. The way they fought back, the way they were really aggressive, Connacht, and put pressure on Leinster and kept the ball for long periods. The Leicester game, probably the response after being 20-0 down as well. They upped their intensity. It's a reaction when you're behind on. So most teams will do that in any sport. But I think he obviously saw some stuff there that if you play with that abandonment and that bit of aggression and really kind of tempo to your game, that maybe that will not suit Leinster, and that you can ask some questions if you keep the ball for a long period. So that probably give them a little bit of hope. And that's what we all spoke about, wasn't it, going into the game? How would La Rochelle, shut them down, shut their Leinster's really cohesive attack down, and that quick ruck speed, the against Toulouse, it was so impressive. It was 1.5 seconds the ball is coming out. Go after the set piece as well, and I think they did so in the scrum on Saturday. With the replacements that came on, Wardy, Slavi, and Facundo Bosch, the Argentinian hooker, their impact off the bench was really telling in that last 20 minutes as well. So no kind of one thing that you can pick out, but I would say being aggressive, confrontational, and holding on to the ball, that probably would have given them hope. And there's nothing obvious in any of that, I think. But I think the belief of La Rochelle, they're a very physical side, and I think that's what they, taking all the tactics out of it, I think that's what they really needed to bring. 80 minutes of being really physical and winning collisions, and they didn't always do that. Leinster had them on the rack a few times, but I just think they unsettled Leinster's attack, and that's Leinster's biggest strength, where they've punished teams this year.
From Leinster's perspective, then, how psychologically damaging is it that they have been unable to get over the line when they're in a winning position with 20 minutes left to go, with 5 minutes left to go, with 3 minutes left to go?
It'll be a hard one to get over. I think, given it's always difficult, Ger, when you're favourites and you're expected to win, and you're fancied to win, I should say. It was strange. I was down around the touchline before the game and just watching both sets of coaches, and I was kind of thinking to myself, as a player, when I was back there, like, somebody's going to be heartbroken today. And you look at Leo Cullen, Ronan O'Gara, Donncha Ryan, Felipe Cantapomi, Lancaster, all walking around and doing their jobs, and you're just thinking, I was kind of visualizing who's going to have that success and that glory, and how is it going to pan out, I think. And it's about getting it right. And I think what went wrong for Leinster was probably very small margins, I think, and it will hurt them a lot, and it will psychologically damage them. But a lot of their players haven't experienced this. I know they had a lot of experience in the side, 6 or 7 fellas who've been there, but there was a number of Leinster players who haven't been in a final before. They're on the scene relatively. They're pretty new to this. In the last couple of years, playing for Ireland and playing at this level in European rugby, and it does. Of course, it affects you, but you learn from it as well. And I think Leinster have evolved so much in their attack, and they probably have to realise that it's not all about attack. I thought Johnny Sexton going off and he got bruised and battered. I thought he was a big loss to them. I know probably people are questioning the decision to run the ball out from his own try line, but I think that when Breece Doolan had that drop goal, I think it was the way the ball bounced and came straight back to the in-goal line, the try line. He wasn't sure, was he going bringing it back over if he touched it down? And then he passed to Hugo Keenan. They got tackled there. Bouguerie, the hooker, gets a brilliant turnover, and they score a try in the corner. I think that was the kind of moment in the match really that really turned that second half and gave La Rochelle that hope that, particularly they kicked into the corner and scored. So, look, psychologically, I think it'll be damaging, but not to the point that this team won't bounce back, because they're too good. They still have a lot of youth on their side. And look, they're hard to win. These competitions are hard to win, and maybe Leinster probably were. Maybe it was a bad thing that they were so dominant against Leicester and Toulouse, and that they probably left their worst performance of the year for the final. And that was, look, a lot of that was down to La Rochelle as well, and that fight that I was speaking about. So it'll be difficult to pick it up, because this was one that they really had one hand on the trophy before the whistle kicked off, or the ball kicked off on that final.
So this is the 30th of May today. The World Cup is next winter, 2023. Do we still think that Sexton starts 5 games or maybe more for Ireland, or do we now just have to bite the bullet and say Sexton needs to be on the field at the end of games, and the only way to do that is to bring him on after an hour?
I don't know, Jared. I haven't really thought about that. I think it's when a team loses, you start picking out individuals and picking out people and what went wrong and what you can change. I just think it wasn't meant to be for Leinster. I just think a couple of things went wrong for them, and like I said, that was down to La Rochelle's brilliance and quality and fight.
We had a lot of text earlier on, I suppose, about how there's a blueprint here to stop Ireland, and you slow down the quick ruck ball, you slow down Gibson-Park's impact on the game by slowing down that quick ruck ball, and all of a sudden Ireland's creativity and Leinster's creativity will be swallowed up. So if you're the All Blacks watching this, you're like, okay, I see something here. And I don't know, in those circumstances, maybe you have no chance if somebody else starts the game. That might be the case. It'd be good to find out, though. Like, if Sexton's only ever going to play 60 minutes, are you better making sure that he's at least on the field for the end of the game, so that there is all of that game nous and intelligence steering you out of difficult situations?
Again, I'm not sure, because it might be something to look at, and maybe in the next 14 or 15 months or whatever it is to the World Cup, that we may see that situation where he is on the bench, and I know psychologically, if you were in a good, and from a scoreline point of view, if you were ahead, having someone like him come on and close out a game, it wouldn't be a problem to him. I think he can do both. I don't know if you're going to have a happy Johnny Sexton if you're not starting him, but it is an option. It is something that could happen, but it depends what the other situation is with the other fly halves, and if they're playing well enough to start the game and put pressure on Johnny Sexton. I think the performances he's shown this year has shown his quality. He hasn't played a lot of games, and we heard Hugo Mola talking about that after the Toulouse game. You know, the number of games. Intimac at 27, started 27 games for this year. And Johnny had started, I think, 11 or 12 and been involved in 15 in total. He was off the bench for 3 or 4. So you are going to have to manage that situation going forward with him. But it is something that maybe an option. But again, I wouldn't like to think that because Leinster were beaten up here and that it's a real worry and a concern. I think their game management deserted them a little bit. When they were 18-10 up, I think there was a real crucial moment in Leinster's, in the La Rochelle half where Leinster were really looked like they were stretching La Rochelle, and they were going for it. And Liebenberg, Vian Liebenberg got an incredible turnover, maybe on the 10-yard line. And I think that was, again, you talk about big moments in games. They were hanging on for dear life. They had 2 or 3 players down on the ground, and the 6 for La Rochelle comes up with an incredible turnover. Now, the scrum half, Bergeron, taps, and he went. I don't think his teammates would have thanked him, but it just showed that it gave them a little bit of a lifeline, that turnover. There was a big emotional effect. And at that stage, Leinster looked like one or two more rucks, and look, La Rochelle were gone. They were going to score a try. And then for those 15 minutes, I just thought Leinster probably should have kicked a little bit more. So it wasn't down to that they were bruised and battered, but they just kept for some reason they weren't able to just get away from La Rochelle. So I think when they look back tactically, I thought they should have kicked a little bit more in those last kind of 15, 20 minutes and tried to play territory and pin La Rochelle back a little bit. But Sexton going off was he didn't go off because of tactics. He went off because he had an ankle problem, and Jonathan Dante charged at him a few times and had him involved in some big collisions. So I think if Sexton stayed on the field there, even for another 7 or 8 minutes, they probably would have seen the game out. They needed to get into the 73rd, 74th minute. I know Ross Byrne kicked the penalty to put him 21-17 up, to stretch it to 4 points. And but just that reaction was incredible from La Rochelle.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Good stuff. Alan, thanks a million. Cheers.
Cheers, lad. Thanks.
Alan Quinlan gave us his thoughts on the weekend's rugby. Your views can come through in the comments on the YouTube stream. You can always text us 0879 180 180.